I bet you've never seen an HOA president try to use a master key on a resident's locked car, then call the cops on the car owner when it didn't work, only to get herself hauled away in cuffs. Sounds insane, right? Well, buckle up, because that's exactly what happened, and honestly, even I still sometimes wonder if I dreamed the whole chaotic circus. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a run-in with an HOA that made you question reality, because this story is a wild one. It all started with a misplaced sense of entitlement, the size of a small planet, and a truly, catastrophically terrible understanding of how keys, cars, and, well, basic laws actually function. My name is Alex, and for a living, I design automotive security systems. The irony, as you'll soon discover, is thicker than a concrete vault door. When I moved into Willow Creek Estates, I was looking for peace, quiet, and a place to tinker on my side projects without bothering anyone. The neighborhood seemed idyllic, all manicured lawns and matching mailboxes. What I didn't account for was the self-appointed queen of this particular fiefdom, Brenda Periwinkle, our HOA president. Brenda was a woman who seemed to have mistaken her laminated HOA president badge for a royal scepter. She had a penchant for expensive, though often slightly garish, designer knockoff outfits. Think leopard print where no leopard print should ever venture, and drove a colossal, perpetually gleaming white Escalade that she parked with an air of challenging anyone to question its slightly off-kilter placement. Her smile was a tight, condescending curve, and her voice possessed the unique ability to make even the most pleasant greeting sound like a thinly veiled accusation. My first inkling that Brenda operated on a different plane of reality came about 3 weeks after I moved in. I was washing my car, a meticulously maintained but understated sedan, in my own driveway on a Saturday afternoon. This car, let's call her Fortress, wasn't just a mode of transport. She was a rolling testament to years I'd spent in automotive security. I'd even beta tested some of the perimeter alert systems and multi-factor authentication for ignition on her myself. Brenda was about to interact with a system I knew better than my own reflection, though she didn't know it yet. As I was rinsing off the soap, her shadow fell over me, metaphorically and literally, as her Escalade idled silently at the end of my driveway. She emerged, clipboard in hand, a vision in what I can only describe as power suit fuchsia. "Mr. Alex," she began, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "I'm afraid you can't wash your vehicle today. It's not a designated car washing day." I paused, hose in hand. A designated car washing day? I must have missed that in the CC rupees. "Could you point me to that section?" I asked, genuinely perplexed but polite. I'd read those covenants, conditions, and restrictions cover to cover before buying. They were dense, but nothing about car wash schedules. Brenda's smile tightened. "It's a new addendum for water conservation and aesthetic harmony," she improvised, tapping her pen on the clipboard. "I'll be sure to have a memo circulated. For now, please cease your activities." I knew an invented rule when I heard one. "With all due respect, Brenda," I said, keeping my tone even, "unless that addendum has been formally voted on by the homeowners and legally incorporated into the CC rupees, I'm afraid it's not enforceable. I'll be done in about 20 minutes. Her face went through a fascinating series of micro-expressions, settling on a look of affronted indignation. She huffed, made a note on her clipboard, probably Resident 17, insolent, needs re-education, and swept back to her urban assault vehicle. That was my official entry into Brenda Periwinkle's Black Book. A few days later, old Mr. Henderson, a kindly retiree who lived across the street and spent most of his days tending his prize-winning roses, caught me as I was getting my mail. He leaned over his fence, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Saw your run-in with Brenda the other day," he said, a twinkle in his eye. "She thinks this HOA is her personal kingdom, son. Be careful. She collects grudges like she collects those hideous porcelain dolls she displays in her front window. And trust me, she has a lot of dolls." I thanked him for the warning, a sense of unease settling in. It seemed my quest for quiet suburban life was about to hit a rather large, fuchsia-clad speed bump. The fines started subtly. A $50 penalty for my perfectly acceptable recycling bin being visible from the street for an excess period. It had been out for all of 3 hours on collection day. Then a $75 one for lawn discoloration, which was a single patch of slightly drier grass the size of my hand during a heat wave. I documented everything meticulously, photographing the alleged infractions, cross-referencing with the CCRs, and paying under protest, always with a polite, registered letter detailing why the fine was baseless. Each letter I sent was, I imagined, another pin in her voodoo doll of me. My background in engineering had blessed me with a love for detail and process, a trait Brenda would consistently and fatally underestimate. I started researching HOA law in our state, just in case. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle, and the sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all. Little did I know, this was just the opening act for a truly spectacular display of overreach that would involve my car, a mythical master key, and the local police department. The car, Fortress, became Brenda's new obsession. It wasn't flashy, no roaring exhaust or garish spoilers, but it was modern, sleek, and to someone like me who understood its internal workings, a technological marvel of security. Perhaps its understated elegance offended her sensibilities, which clearly leaned towards the more is more philosophy evident in her wardrobe and vehicle choice. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my windshield, printed on official-looking HOA letterhead, about vehicle presentation standards. One note complained about a smudge on the rear bumper. It was dust. Another about the aggressive styling of my factory, standard alloy wheels. I photographed each note, filed it, and ignored it. Then came the attempt to have Fortress towed. I received an urgent email one afternoon, another HOA official communication, stating my car was improperly parked in a manner obstructing potential emergency vehicle access in my own driveway and would be towed within 2 hours if not rectified. I was home at the time. I looked out the window. Fortress was parked perfectly, well within the boundaries of my driveway, leaving more than enough room for a fire truck, let alone an ambulance. My security cameras, which I'd installed shortly after moving in a habit from living in less placid urban environments, covered the entire driveway and street frontage. I saved the footage, sent a polite email back to the HOA board, copying Brenda, of course, with a time-stamped screenshot showing the car's perfectly legal and considerate placement, and stated that any attempt to tow my vehicle would be considered attempted theft and trespass, and I would prosecute. The tow truck never materialized, but I could almost feel Brenda's blood pressure rising from across the neighborhood. It was around this time that the whispers of the HOA master key began to circulate. Sarah, a newer board member who I'd chatted with a couple of times, and who seemed genuinely dedicated to the community rather than personal power trips, quietly approached me during a Saturday morning farmer's market. She looked harried. "Alex," she said, her voice low, "I need to talk to you. Brenda's been, she's been telling some of the other board members and even some residents that the HOA has, or should have, master keys to all properties, including vehicles, for emergency access and compliance spot checks." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity. Master keys for cars? Is she serious? Sarah nodded grimly. She's dead serious. She thinks it's her right, as president, to ensure everyone is complying with every rule, even the ones she makes up on the spot. Some of the older residents are actually intimidated. They're asking if they need to provide spares. As an automotive security engineer, the concept was not only deeply disturbing from a privacy and legal standpoint, but also hilariously impractical from a technical one. The sheer variety of key fobs, transponders, and mechanical keyways made a universal master key for cars a logistical impossibility, short of having a flatbed truck and a team of hot wiring experts on permanent retainer. "Sarah," I said, "that's not just an overreach. That's wildly illegal. Forcing someone to grant access to their private vehicle, that's stepping into criminal territory." I could see the worry in her eyes. "I know," she sighed. "I've tried to reason with her, but it's like talking to a brick wall. A very loud, very confident brick wall. This was a new level of insanity. I immediately started a new file. Brenda Periwinkle, Project Master Key. I began documenting every rumor, every comment Sarah relayed from board meetings, every new passive-aggressive HOA newsletter that hinted at enhanced community oversight protocols. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. May Albright, who specialized in property and HOA disputes, had a good laugh when I told her, then immediately turned serious. Alex, this is beyond typical HOA overreach. This is harassment and potentially conspiracy to commit unlawful entry if she actually tries to solicit keys under false pretenses or attempts to use some bogus master key. Keep meticulous records. We need to be ready. The predicted escalation wasn't long in coming. An official HOA mandate appeared in everyone's mailbox. It was printed on thick, cream-colored paper, embossed with the Willow Creek Estates logo, looking for all the world like a wedding invitation to a nightmare. The mandate stated, in no uncertain terms, that due to recent security concerns and the need for unimpeded regulatory access, all residents were required to provide the HOA management office with a duplicate key to their primary vehicles within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in significant daily fines and potential vehicle immobilization. My jaw practically hit the floor. This wasn't just a suggestion or a misguided policy. This was a demand backed by threats. Brenda had well and truly lost the plot. Ms. Albright drafted a cease and desist letter so sharp it could have cut glass. It detailed the illegality of Brenda's demand, cited specific state and federal laws regarding privacy and property rights, and warned of immediate legal action if the mandate wasn't rescinded, and if any further harassment occurred. We sent it via registered mail. Return receipt requested. The green card came back, signed by Brenda herself. The silence that followed was ominous. It was the quiet, not of capitulation, but of a predator gathering itself to strike. I double-checked my security system's coverage, ensuring every angle of my driveway and fortress was crystal clear, day or night. My car's dash cam, a sophisticated model, was set to record on motion or impact, its internal battery good for days. I had a feeling the main event was coming soon, and I wanted front-row seats to Brenda's inevitable self-destruction. The day of the Great Master Key incident dawned bright and sunny, a perfect Saturday. I was in my garage, tinkering with a new encryption algorithm for a personal project. The garage door open about a foot for ventilation. This gave me a discreet, ground-level view of my driveway and a portion of the street. Fortress was parked in her usual spot, gleaming innocently. Around 10:30 a.m., my phone, which was linked to my security system, buzzed with a proximity alert for the driveway. I glanced at the live feed on my workshop monitor, and there she was. Brenda Periwinkle, in all her glory, emerging from her white Escalade which she'd parked, characteristically, halfway across the sidewalk. She was wearing what I could only describe as a lime green pantsuit, the kind of color that usually only exists in highlighter pens. It was so vibrant it practically hummed. With her was Gary, the HOA's perpetually nervous groundskeeper, a man whose default expression was one of someone bracing for an unpleasant surprise. He was clutching a small, battered toolbox, and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth, possibly including the moon. Brenda strode towards Fortress with an air of grim determination, like a particularly unhinged general leading a charge. Gary trailed behind her, shuffling his feet. I leaned closer to my monitor, my heart rate picking up a notch. This was it. Brenda stopped beside Fortress's driver's side door. She fumbled in her oversized handbag, probably a knockoff Birkin, knowing her taste, and produced a key. It glinted in the sunlight. From my vantage point, it looked suspiciously like a standard, uncut quick-set house key blank, the kind you could buy at any hardware store for a couple of bucks. It was, to put it mildly, not going to interface successfully with Fortress's high-security, laser-cut, transponder-chipped lock mechanism. She held it up with a flourish, as if presenting Excalibur, Then, with Gary watching in what I imagined was horrified fascination, she attempted to insert it into Fortress's door lock. She jiggled it. She pushed. She twisted it with a grunt of effort. Nothing. Of course, nothing. Fortress's lock cylinder was designed to resist precisely this kind of ham-fisted assault. Frustration clouded Brenda's face. She tried again, more forcefully this time, rattling the door handle. I could almost hear the faint scratching sounds through my monitor's audio feed. My car, being the sensitive soul she was, decided she'd had enough. The alarm system, which I had personally calibrated to be both ear-splittingly loud and uniquely annoying with a series of escalating sirens and flashing lights, erupted. Whoop! Whoop! Ee-oo! Ee-oo! The tranquil suburban morning was shattered. Birds took flight from nearby trees. I saw Mr. Henderson's curtains twitch across the street. Brenda jumped back as if scalded, her hand flying to her chest in mock surprise, though her expression was pure fury. Gary actually dropped his toolbox, scattering a few screwdrivers. The alarm blared on, a symphony of vehicular indignation. This, apparently, was not part of Brenda's master plan. Her master key had failed. The car was audibly protesting its molestation. And now, the entire neighborhood was being alerted to her shenanigans. Instead of retreating, however, Brenda doubled down. Her face contorted with rage, she whipped out her phone and stabbed at the screen. I switched my security system's audio focus to pick up her voice more clearly over the din of Fortress's righteous anger. 911 emergency? Yes. I am Brenda Periwinkle, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Her voice was shrill, laced with manufactured panic. There's a highly suspicious vehicle here. Its alarm is going off, disturbing the entire neighborhood. I believe it may be stolen or involved in some sort of illicit activity. I was attempting to secure it, as is my duty, but the owner, a Mr. Alex Sterling, is being completely uncooperative and hostile. He's barricaded himself in his house. You need to send officers immediately. He's a menace. I sat back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. She had no idea I was watching her, recording her every move, her every word. She was, quite literally, orchestrating her own downfall, complete with a soundtrack provided by my car. I calmly saved the multiple video angles, including the close-up of her attempting to jam the wrong key into my lock, and the crystal-clear audio of her fabricated 911 call. Then, I turned off Fortress's alarm remotely via my phone app. Silence descended, almost as shocking as the noise had been. I waited. The police, I knew, would be here soon. And I had a story to tell, with irrefutable visual aids. Gary, bless his cowardly heart, had already picked up his scattered tools and was making a hasty retreat down the street, practically crab-walking in his desire to be elsewhere. Brenda, however, stood her ground, arms crossed, tapping her foot, the picture of indignant authority waiting for cavalry that was about to charge in the wrong direction. It didn't take long. Within 5 minutes, the familiar whoop of a siren grew louder, and a patrol car, lights flashing, pulled up to the curb. 2 officers emerged, one older, more seasoned-looking with a calm, watchful demeanor, Officer Miller, as I'd later learn, and a younger officer, looking alert and ready for anything. Brenda descended upon them like a hawk on a field mouse. "Officers! Thank heavens you're here!" she gushed, her voice a cocktail of relief and accusation. She gestured dramatically towards Fortress, then towards my house. "This man, Alex Sterling, is a complete troublemaker. His car alarm was deliberately set off to disturb the peace, I'm sure of it. And he refuses to grant me, the HOA president, access for a vital safety inspection. I suspect the vehicle may be involved in illicit activities, or perhaps it's not even registered properly. He's been nothing but evasive and hostile." She was really laying it on thick, painting herself as the valiant guardian of neighborhood order. I chose that moment to calmly walk out of my garage, phone in hand, displaying the live security feed. "Good morning, officers," I said, my voice even and polite. "I'm Alex Sterling. This is my car, Fortress, parked in my driveway. This woman, Miss Praman, Brenda Periwinkle, the HOA president, was just attempting to unlawfully enter my vehicle, using what appeared to be a house key. When she failed and the car alarm activated, she then called you with a demonstrably false report. I have clear video footage of the entire incident from 3 different angles, including her trying to force the key into my car door, and audio of her 911 call. Brenda's jaw dropped. Her fuchsia-clad form seemed to quiver with outrage. Lies. All lies. He's doctored the footage. It's an HOA master key. I have the right. I have the duty. He's the one breaking the rules, endangering the community, she shrieked, her voice cracking. Officer Miller, his expression unreadable, turned his gaze to Brenda. It was the kind of look that had probably seen 1,000 petty squabbles and a few genuine crises. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm but firm, "an HOA master key for a private citizen's automobile. That's unusual. Could you show me this key, please? And perhaps the section of your HOA bylaws that authorizes its use on personal vehicles without owner consent." Brenda, momentarily flustered by the request for actual evidence but quickly regaining her bluster, rummaged in her handbag again and produced the sad little quickset blank with a triumphant flourish, as if it were a scepter. "Here it is, the official HOA master access key." Officer Miller took the key. He examined it for a long moment, turning it over in his fingers. He glanced at Fortress's pristine door lock. I'd have to check for scratches later, but her paint was tough. Then he looked back at Brenda, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Ma'am," he said, his tone still neutral, "this appears to be a standard, uncut house key blank. And, just for clarification, attempting to open someone's locked car without their explicit permission, regardless of your position in an HOA, generally constitutes unlawful entry or attempted vehicle tampering. Your master key theory doesn't hold much water, legally speaking." Brenda sputtered, But, the regulations, the safety, the compliance." The younger officer was now looking distinctly uncomfortable, glancing between Brenda, me, and his partner. I took the opportunity. "Officers," I said, "if you'd be willing to step into my garage for a moment, I can show you the unedited, time-stamped video footage. It clearly shows Ms. Periwinkle's actions leading up to the alarm, her attempts with the key, and her subsequent call to you. I also have copies of previous HOA correspondence, where she illegally demanded residents provide her with spare car keys." Brenda went pale beneath her slightly too heavy foundation. "You can't. That's his private. It's an invasion of his privacy to show you that." The irony was apparently lost on her. Officer Miller nodded at me. "We'll take a look, Mr. Sterling." We stepped into the garage, and I queued up the footage on my large workshop monitor. The officers watched intently. First, the wide shot of Brenda and Gary approaching. Then the close-up of Brenda wrestling with the key in Fortress's lock. The satisfying eruption of the alarm. Finally, the audio-enhanced recording of her 911 call. Every fabricated word clear as day. I also showed them the official HOA mandate demanding vehicle keys. Officer Miller's expression hardened as he listened to Brenda's dramatic, false accusations to the 911 dispatcher. When the playback finished, there was a moment of silence. He exchanged a look with his partner, who just shook his head slightly. They had seen enough. They walked back out to the driveway, where Brenda was anxiously pacing, her lime green suit practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Miss Periwinkle," Officer Miller began, his voice now devoid of any ambiguity, carrying the weight of authority, based on the evidence provided by Mr. Sterling, which includes clear video footage of your actions, the object you attempted to use to gain entry to his vehicle, and the recording of your call to 911. It appears you have committed several offenses. Specifically, attempted unlawful entry of a motor vehicle, and, more seriously, knowingly filing a false police report, which is a significant misuse of emergency services. Brenda's face crumpled. The arrogant bluster evaporated, replaced by a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "What? No, you can't be serious. I am the HOA president. I was doing my job. He's the criminal here, with his His secret recordings, she stammered, gesturing wildly. Officer Miller remained unmoved. Ma'am, your position as HOA president does not grant you immunity from the law, nor does it give you the right to attempt to force entry into private property or to file false reports with law enforcement. Mr. Sterling's security cameras, on his own property, recording events in plain view, are perfectly legal. Your actions, however, are not. Then came the words Brenda Periwinkle, probably never, in her wildest, power-drunk fantasies, ever imagined she would hear directed at her. Brenda Periwinkle, Officer Miller stated, his voice ringing with official finality. You are under arrest. The meltdown was instantaneous and spectacular. Arrest me? She shrieked, her voice hitting a new octave that could shatter glass. You can't arrest me. I am the HOA. I am the law. In Willow Creek Estates. This is an outrage. A travesty of justice. I'll have your badges. I know the mayor. I'll sue you. I'll sue everyone. She flailed her arms, her expensive, tacky handbag slipping from her shoulder and hitting the pavement with a dull thud. Her lime green pantsuit seemed to blaze with indignant fury. Officer Miller, bless his professional calm, simply sighed. Ma'am, you're now also creating a public disturbance, in addition to the charges of attempted unlawful entry and filing a false police report. Please place your hands behind your back. The younger officer stepped forward, handcuffs at the ready. Brenda, realizing this was actually happening, tried to back away, nearly tripping over her own feet. No, get away from me, this is harassment. But it was too late. With surprising efficiency, the officers had her cuffed. The sight of Brenda Periwinkle, HOA president extraordinaire, resplendent in her lime green suit of armor, now adorned with shiny new police-issue bracelets, being firmly but professionally guided towards the back of the patrol car, was a moment of pure, unadulterated suburban catharsis. Several neighbors, drawn by the initial alarm and then the arrival of the police, had gathered at a respectful distance. I saw Mr. Henderson standing on his porch, a slow, immensely satisfied grin spreading across his face. He caught my eye and gave a subtle, approving nod. Gary, the groundskeeper, wise man that he was nowhere to be seen, having apparently achieved warp speed in his retreat. Brenda was still shouting protests and threats as they placed her in the police car, but her voice was muffled as the door closed. The patrol car pulled away, its lights no longer flashing, taking with it the reign of Queen Brenda. The officers took my full statement, meticulously collected copies of the video files onto a secure drive, and accepted the printed HOA documents, including the infamous key mandate and my previous cease and desist letter. Officer Miller shook my head. Mr. Sterling, thank you for your remarkably clear evidence and your calm demeanor throughout this. It's not every day we get a case this well documented. You've saved us, and likely the courts, a lot of time. I just nodded, a wave of relief washing over me. The immediate aftermath was, predictably, chaotic for the Willow Creek Estates HOA. Brenda, I later learned, spent a few uncomfortable hours at the station before being bailed out, presumably by her meek, rarely seen husband who probably had to pawn some of her porcelain doll collection to do it. She was facing charges for attempted unlawful entry of a vehicle, filing a false police report, and they even tacked on disturbing the peace thanks to her final performance. The HOA board was thrown into an emergency session. Sarah, the sympathetic board member, stepped up, armed with her own concerns and now the undeniable proof of Brenda's malfeasance. She called me, asking if I'd be willing to present my evidence to the entire board and, subsequently, to the homeowners at an emergency general meeting. I agreed. It was time for full transparency. At the emergency HOA meeting a week later, the community room was packed. Word had spread like wildfire. I presented my case calmly and factually, playing the video footage on a projector. Gasps rippled through the room as they saw Brenda attempting to jimmy my car lock, followed by murmurs of disbelief and anger as they heard her blatant lies to the 911 dispatcher. The key mandate letter was passed around, met with universal condemnation. The community, many of whom had suffered under Brenda's petty tyrannies in silence, was horrified and galvanized. Brenda was, of course, absent, probably on the advice of her newly acquired and no doubt very expensive lawyer. The vote to remove her as president and as a board member was unanimous. The HOA's own legal counsel, a sensible fellow who looked utterly mortified by the whole affair, strongly advised the remaining board to immediately issue a formal, written retraction of the vehicle key demand policy, issue a public apology to me and the entire community for Brenda's actions, and to undertake a complete review of all HOA policies and procedures to prevent such abuses of power in the future. Sarah was elected interim president, and a new era of sensible governance began to dawn on Willow Creek Estates. New bylaws were drafted with community input, emphasizing transparency, resident rights, and clear limitations on board authority. The atmosphere in the neighborhood changed palpably. People seemed more relaxed, more willing to chat over fences. The oppressive shadow of Brenda's reign lifted. As for Brenda, her legal troubles continued. She eventually pleaded no contest to lesser charges, misdemeanor, false reporting, and attempted criminal mischief, paid a hefty fine, was sentenced to a significant number of community service hours. Ironically, she was assigned to clean up litter along the highway, a far cry from her pristine Escalade, and received a probationary period. Most satisfyingly for me, a restraining order was put in place, preventing her from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my property. Her white Escalade became a much rarer sight, and rumor had it they were even considering moving. Fortress, my trusty car, suffered no lasting damage, just a few microscopic scratches near the lock that I easily buffed out. She had served as the catalyst for a much-needed change. So, that's how our HOA president went from demanding my car keys with the arrogance of a feudal lord to wearing a pair of shiny new bracelets, courtesy of local law enforcement. It was a stressful, frankly bizarre ordeal, but seeing the positive changes in our community afterward, the return of common sense and neighborly respect, made every bit of the hassle worthwhile. It taught me, and hopefully others, that you should always stand up for your rights, document everything when dealing with bullies, and never, ever let a petty tyrant, no matter how loudly they proclaim their authority, think they have a master key to your life, your property, or your peace of mind. Thanks for tuning in, and if you have a crazy HOA story of your own, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of entitlement getting its just desserts. Stay safe out there, and always check who's trying to unlock your world.